Hello, it's me, Owen Fernie, Keyframe Coach, back with another Keyframe Coach review. Hang on, that's better, nice and centered. So, once again, we have another review from Mike. They're only from Mike. They're only ever from Mike. I haven't really been doing any Keyframe Coach stuff, any YouTube stuff at all, really. Mike purchased 6 reviews, so just doing those as and when Mike sends me them, which is why there's no like secret backdoor where you can hire me for reviews or anything like that. It's just I'm honoring the purchases that were made before I kind of decided that I wanted to take a step back from doing Keyframe Coach. So maybe that answers any questions you might have if you did have any. There's a couple of subscribers on here. Who knows? Anyway, we are going to look at Mike's awesome work. So, thanks for sending this in, Mike. And it's awesome. I really, really like it. I feel like you have progressed a lot in your animation, and I feel like this is a big level up from some of the previous stuff I've seen. So, awesome job. I love a lot about it. The energy is really fun, and there's some things that are working really well. The effects and the timing of that stuff. There's small chunks of it which are working really well. But I've also made a ton of notes here, so I'll go through them, and might seem like I'm going through them quickly. I just got a lot of notes, and you know, can't say too many nice things. Got to keep you on your toes. So let's have a look. I'll try and remember to say some nice things as I go. um, all right. It felt like to me at the start, if you kind of look through that drawing, that arm was kind of moving quite a lot. Feels like the arm is kind of doing a little bit too much. Kind of draws the focus away from like that head turn up. I would just keep her kind of in that still pose and then make it more about that head turn, and everything else is just kind of residual. So to me, it's not really worth moving the arm or much at all, other than keeping alive at the start. And then also with the pose, I feel like it's cool. It's fairly dynamic. She feels like she's got some kind of attitude and weight to her, which is cool. I just feel like the lightsaber. I'm sorry if it's not a lightsaber. Just it's light. It's lit up and it's a weapon. So I'm gonna call it a lightsaber. But I feel like the lightsaber could be in a clearer silhouette. It kind of feels like it's just like tickling the edge of her. So it could either, be fully out or, this way or behind her. But I feel like this way you get, that clear kind of she's holding this thing. And it's just a little clearer, hopefully, of a pose. And it's a little more dynamic, I guess. Here, I was just kind of tracking that headspace. Kind of feels like it's actually not so much the headspace, it's more the hip space through here. So if you look at the arc of the hip, if I turn off these drawings, you can kind of see you're doing a lot of back and forth and an arc that looks like that. And I would just keep that as simple as possible in terms of, translate X, I guess. When something is kind of translate X and translate Y and translate Z all within a couple of frames of each other, it's a pretty good indicator that the arc might need to be simplified a little. You can kind of see that we're going screen right, and then we kind of get locked and go up, and then go back screen right. And then through here, we quite quickly go screen left and lock again. I would just kind of keep that much more fluid. And also, I kind of did a bit of a bend there through that chest just to as the hips go back, the chest kind of goes in on itself to counter that motion. And then just speaking on that hand again, I felt like it just goes out too much. Again, it's kind of drawing attention away from, you know, what's happening with her body and her anticipation. Takes away from her feel of being in control as much. And then I guess through here, I was just thinking about, you know, reversing that spine and getting some shape change in there, but also trying to simplify lines as much as possible. You know, if you could kind of get one solid line of action through there, where, you know, her hips are over here, hips, her chest is like doing this, and, you know, something a bit more in this region. It's just going to give you that nice kind of line. I mean, I'm sure you won't be able to get something super clean like that, just because of like the rig shape and stuff. But, you know, if you can imagine what would be the cleanest line that you could possibly get in your pose, then, you know, that would be cool. Always thinking about complex versus simple. I guess this is the simple side. This is the complex side. Again, just thinking about shape change and reversing that spine through here. Felt like you wanted to maybe arc down before then doing that move up and really reversing that spine. And I also felt like keeping her on her, you know, with a bent leg in this kind of squat position felt a little bit awkward versus a big, you know, strong line of action through her whole body and really, you know, pushing that saber up. So maybe you don't come down as much here. You can kind of feel that this is, you know, just feeling a little awkward, like she's squatting, like over squatting a bit too much. And there's also not much heel engaged or anything for having the lower leg bent so much. So I just felt like something more line of action-y and could be cool. And then I was just tracking the lightsaber through here. Kind of felt like the arc of it is, you know, it's maybe making sense with the arms, but when you translate that to a big pole that she's holding, if you look at, you know, the ends and track those, you can kind of see that our line is jumping to here, and our eyes, sorry, are jumping to here and then to here, and then, you know, we're doing something really massive. Whereas if it was essentially she's got a pole and then that pole kind of went like that, you know, and followed that shape, it's going to be a lot clearer to track, and it's just going to feel, you know, when you see these ribbon dancers, or I guess someone with a staff, or someone elegant, the way they're handling that, it's just going to feel a bit more like that. So hopefully that feels like it if I just play through that little bit. You can hopefully see that we're kind of keeping this arc, just following around and doing this. And even on some of these, you could, you know, potentially smear the edge of that to, you know, give some kind of indication of spin in there, but also, you know, add to the arc, general arciness. Arcs in weapons are super nice, and they're something that we can do in animation better than live action, so it's a great opportunity to do that. And then I also felt like, again, similar to that kind of problem with the feeling just a bit awkward down here with the legs, felt like you could maybe incorporate some of that, or just think about that going forward in, you know, most of your poses. So here's an example of, you know, you can kind of just feel like it's not quite straight in the leg, and we're also kind of heavy on our heel, and there's just kind of lacking some dynamicness in the, in how, you know, playing with that hip where it is and, you know, center of gravity here. So I'd always kind of try and keep her legs when we're, you know, pushing off or doing a big movement like this to be as straight as possible so that we really feel, you know, if we go from, say, for example, you know, a leg down here and then push off, it's, you know, it might technically like mathematically be correct, or, you know, be correct for the character or the height that they need to jump. But if you do something that's actually a bit more, you know, just a straight leg coming off, this is going to feel, you know, you're really going to feel this kind of arrow shape. And, you know, maybe even just if you're treating it like, ooh, as much as possible, maybe have some kind of break in there just for anatomy. But it just made the anatomy way worse. Why did I do that? But, you know, this just feels so much more impactful. It's an instant read, especially when we're just holding that pose on the screen for 2 frames. Wherever we can, go from bent to straight, and, you know, just push that contrast, push the clarity really of the pose, and just, I guess, the graphicness of the pose, especially on something like this where it's, you know, very anime inspired, and they would, you know, go from a strong pose like this to a straight-legged pose, and, you know, very much like get the heel involved in there as well, so you'd kind of feel a bit more of this kind of stuff going on at times. I can't draw. Like, here's another example, right? So you have this great opportunity to have a straight leg and to just really feel this kind of dynamic line of action all through here. So yeah, wherever we can, get straights in our posing. Also, you know, try and get things more in 1, 2, 3, if you can. Just to help with clarity, really. And then I felt like that leg kind of wanted to come up and over. Then we kind of end up, you know, doing this arc down here, and then we slam down with that foot, which then, so you go, oh, and then that sends you forward and therefore flings the lightsaber into the distance. Just anything to help add more energy and more anticipation and more build up to that big final release of energy. Oh. You know, dragging that saber back, and so this is the saber, not the arm. But, you know, anything you can do to, you know, break that up and push the silhouette. Just push the pose. So I guess you would also, you know, have a bit more of a down in there and a bit more of a reversal. So again, you kind of end in the reversal spine. And then through here, it just felt a little isolated to the hip. You can kind of see if I frame through. We're kind of just moving everything on here, and you're not feeling that kind of, if I throw and then, like feeling like a rebound of energy or like a regaining of composure. I just like, you know, I just want to feel some more energy through that body to really sell that you've flung that thing just miles in the air. And the reason I say a lot of that is because it does feel like when you throw it, it just kind of you're not really sure if it's gone far or if she's just kind of like tossed it so it's just hovering above here. So I just feel like a bit more energy could be put into that. And then I really felt like this was quite a harsh exit into this next part, especially because we kind of do this very harsh spacing and then we're pretty locked, or not locked, but we go from over here to over here, and then like the spacing goes here, 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 you know? So just think about that progressive spacing. So we want to think about it as more as like this, 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 just gradually getting faster and faster as we exit and overtake the camera. A good rule is if you're doing a really fast movement, then you want a longer anticipation or a longer ease out. So if you're gonna just stand there and then quickly smear off screen, you want to kind of, instead of just going and you're gone, you want to tell the audience what you're going to do. So you want to go and then smear off screen, or you want to, you know, start to ease into it, and maybe that's part of your anticipation. So I'm saying ease out / antic here because, you know, I'm not exactly saying do the, you know, Mickey Mouse leg up, smear off screen. But you just want to think about how you're telling the audience that you're going to do this massive spacing, basically. Because if you just stand here and then next frame you're gone, the audience is like, wait, what exactly happened? Whereas if you go and then next frame you're gone, the audience reads it and they just see, you know, smoke on the screen. It's super clear. Or you see, you know, some Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner action. This felt pretty nice through here, generally. I really like the posing and things. There are a few issues with spacing. Like I said with that, just focus on, you know, doing progressive spacing. But generally, there's some nice motion through here and some nice posing, particularly. This all feels really nice and clear. One thing I'd say is, let me just take a sip. Ooh. One thing I'd say, and I always say about any body mechanics shot that I ever review, is just to watch that headspace. So we kind of get down here, and you can kind of see how that headspace basically locks. So if that was progressing through instead, you probably want to feel it here. You know, you can still kind of maintain what you have with your posing and actually push things a bit further. And then, so you're doing a lot of contrast in your poses, but you're still able to read the arc and, you know, maintain the spacing of the head through there. And a similar thing with this landing as well. So you overshoot. Look at the headspace. And then go back. So it kind of pops the motion where you know, you're progressing forward through the scene. Whereas you want to do it with like the contrast in the body and then maintain the kind of headspace arc. So might even push it further back. And then you can see how the head is coming forward. The bum can go back maybe slightly, maybe it still continues forward. And then again, that head is always progressing, so it goes boink, 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 basically. Versus what, and then kind of stops, and then quite quickly goes, you know, with spacing. If we want to make it more readable, we want to, you know, put our spacing more boom, 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 because you still got that spacing through the up downs, you know, 1, 2, 3. So the spacing is increasing in the translate Y, but then the spacing is pretty even in the translate X, which means that you're getting more of that bouncing ball feeling through the, through the parts of the body that through the center of mass essentially. Again, just looking at that arc, kind of feels like we go up. So we get here and then we sort of go up versus the bouncing ball stuff. I just try and get a little bit more offset between these legs. Kind of feels like they just both go up together with the same. Twinning is the technical term. Just feels a little twinned right now. It'd be nice if they kind of had different spacing. So it's like, oh. That's a pretty good impression of different untwinned spacing, actually. All right, what have we got? Felt like you could grab that saber with both hands and you just read that more if it comes up, and then versus, one comes back here and one goes there. Just clarity, 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 really. And a similar thing that I mentioned before with the 1, 2, 3 in the legs. You kind of lose that behind. Kind of see it's all just one line right now. And then similar on the other side where you've got, it's filled essentially like one line with a little lump here versus 1, 2, 3. And then here, I like how you're kind of overtaking the camera. It felt really nice. Feel like we can push things a little more to work even nicer. Oh, I'm running out of water. The throat's starting to tingle. Haven't spoken for 20 minutes in so long. So it felt like it all kind of comes to camera at the same time versus, she comes and that saber drags behind her. So I just felt like maybe you could drag that a bit. And then it just feels like it doesn't quite go far enough. And it feels like you almost want to bring her really close to camera. You might even want her face right there. And she's, screaming, or I don't know what she's doing. So you could go as far as you want with it, but it does just feel like we're kind of easing into this final pose and we're not really like traveling through the air as much as we were. But I do like the big jump in spacing. I just feel like you could, instead of just, and then we're here with the camera and just following, it can sort of be up. And then the camera takes sorry, my hand's off screen. So you're overtaking, and then the camera kind of catches up. And then as the camera gets a chance to, there's like a little hold almost, and then you feel that big impact. I do feel the impact. Could just feel it more, We could come from something like this where she's in the center of the screen to, coming right out to here. Ooh. And that doesn't have to be like a close-up of her face, by the way. It could be a close-up of anything if you wanted. You could do a close-up of the saber and, feel that the energy from the saber or whatever you like. Just a purpose for the shot, really. For the essentially for the camera cut that we're doing, that we're kind of cheating with a camera move. But, we're telling the audience something new. So are you telling the audience here about the aggression on her face, or are you telling them about the energy of the lightsaber? And then this is just really cool. I love what you did here. Only thing I'll say is you're doing a massive impact in the ground. Feels like the energy is fully in that lightsaber, and she's, you know, back down with it, put all of her weight into it. Just feels like you could keep this solid, and we could pivot from here, so this stays solid, and then we could have more reaction in her. At the moment, it kind of feels like you hit, and it's like hitting a stick off of the ground versus hitting something which weighs 100 kilos into the ground, you know. If it's something that's going to smash the ground into smithereens, it's probably going to be like 100 kilo, 200 kilo sword versus a stick, which is going to have that as you hit the ground. So, and then all the weight is in her as she's reacting while this very powerful stick hits in the ground. But overall, very nice work. Very pleased to have a look at it, as always. Thanks very much again, Mike, for sending this in. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks very much.